Good evening, everyone. Welcome back, future lawyers, to day 23 of our bar review. We are now exactly 166 days away from the bar examination. Today, we complete our classification of subject matter jurisdiction. We have discussed the timeline of a case, like the original versus the appellate, and the scope of a court's power, general versus special. And today, we'll look at how power is distributed among multiple courts. Exclusive versus concurrent jurisdiction. Our guiding verse for today is Matthew chapter 6 verse 24. No one can serve two masters. In litigation, having too many courts with the power to decide the same case can create chaos. As we will learn today, while the law sometimes allows multiple courts to share power, a case can ultimately serve only one master. But before we tackle this, let us resolve the bar question I left you with back in day 19 regarding contractual stipulation and subject matter jurisdiction. Here is the question we left hanging 3 days ago. X Corporation sued Y Incorporated for $1,500,000 in the RTC, relying on a signed contract where both parties explicitly conferred exclusive jurisdiction to the RTC. Y Incorporated moved to dismiss, arguing that the law places this claim under the MATC. Should the RTC grant the dismissal? Let us reveal the suggested bar answer using our Beer method. If you draft if your draft looks like this, give yourself full points. First, the binary. Yes, the RTC should grant the motion to dismiss. Second, the enabling law. Jurisprudence provides that jurisdiction over the subject matter is conferred strictly by law and cannot be conferred by consent, agreement, or waiver of the parties. Third, the evaluation. Here, the jurisdiction over the collection case amounting to 1,500,000 is conferred strictly by RA 11576 to METCs, but X Corporation filed it before the RTC relying on their agreement. And finally, the resolution. Thus, the RTC should grant the motion to dismiss. This is an exceptionally sharp and efficient answer. Notice how the evaluation perfectly incorporates the specific law, the exact monetary figure, and the reason why the contractual agreement fails, all in one highly readable sentence. Now let us proceed to today's main topic. To properly digest exclusive and concurrent jurisdiction, we will use our four-level analytical framework, the Beer silos. First, the big picture, recalling how the legislature distributes judicial power. Second, the essential pillar, where we define and visually contrast exclusive versus concurrent power. Third, the elemental principle, where we explore the rules that prevent chaos when multiple courts share power. And finally, the root level, looking at the Supreme Court ruling applying the strict rule of exclusion once a court is chosen. For our big picture, we remember that subject matter jurisdiction is a matter of substantive law. Congress has the ultimate authority to apportion and distribute this power. In doing so, Congress must decide, should this specific type of case be handled by only one level of court, or is this case important that multiple levels of court should share the power to hear it? This brings us to exclusive and concurrent jurisdiction. Moving down to our essential pillar, what is exclusive jurisdiction? Look at the image on your screen. Notice the massive wall with only one single keyhole. Exclusive jurisdiction means the power to adjudicate a case belongs to one specific court, to the absolute exclusion of all other courts. If your case falls here, you have no choice. you must file it in that specific court. For example, if you want to file an ejectment suit, the municipal trial court holds the sole exclusive key. If you file it anywhere else, it will be dismissed outright for lack of jurisdiction. On the other hand, what is concurrent jurisdiction? Look at the second image. Instead of one keyhole, there are three open doors leading into the exact same room. Concurrent jurisdiction, also called coordinate jurisdiction, is the power conferred upon different courts to take cognizance of the same subject matter. Here, the plaintiff actually has a choice. The classic examples are the extraordinary writs of certiorari, prohibition, mandamus, and habeas corpus. The law explicitly gives the RTC, the CA, and the Supreme Court the shared power to hear these original petitions. Now, we reach the elemental principle. If there are three open doors, can you just walk into whichever one you want? Look at the grand staircase on your screen. While courts may share concurrent jurisdiction, the doctrine of hierarchy of courts dictates that you cannot simply jump to the top step. Concurrence of jurisdiction does not give the petitioner the absolute unbridled freedom of choice. You must start at the lowest ranked court that shares the power. If you want to file a petition for certiorari, you must file it in the RTC first, not the Supreme Court, unless you can prove an exception like transcendental importance. Continuing with our elemental principle, what happens after you successfully choose a court? Look at the visual on your screen. The moment the lawyer steps through one door, iron gates violently slam shut on the other two. This is the principle of exclusion. The golden rule is this: where several courts have concurrent jurisdiction, the court which first takes cognizance of the complaint assumes jurisdiction to the absolute exclusion of all other courts. You cannot file the same petition in the RTC and then change your mind and file it again in the Court of Appeals. The first court locks out all the others to prevent conflicting decisions. Before we discuss a root level case, let us hit the pause button. Close your eyes, actively recall the visual anchors. What does the single keyhole represent? Exclusive jurisdiction. What do the three open doors represent? Concurrent jurisdiction. Why are the glowing footprints forced to start at the bottom of the stairs? Because of the hierarchy of courts. And finally, what does the iron gate slamming shut represent? The principle of exclusion. Open your eyes. Excellent recall. Let us bring this down to the root level with the Supreme Court ruling in Patog Sr. versus Civil Service Commission. In this case, the Supreme Court firmly applied the principle of exclusion. The court ruled that where concurrent jurisdiction exists in several tribunals, the body that first takes cognizance of the complaint shall exercise jurisdiction to the exclusion of the others. The choice of forum in concurrent jurisdiction is one-time privilege. Once a party invokes the power of one concurrent court, that court absorbs the whole case. If you attempt to file the exact same action in another concurrent court, the second court must dismiss it because its door has already been permanently shut. To wrap up our discussion today, here is a highly possible bar question testing the limits of concurrent jurisdiction. Let us read it. Attorney Cross filed a mandamus petition in the RTC. Growing impatient and knowing the CA shares concurrent jurisdiction, he filed an identical petition in the in the Court of Appeals, arguing the CA has absolute power to take cognizance of it. Is the argument of Attorney Cross correct? We will leave this question with you as your assignment. Remember the heavy iron gate slamming shut once a door is chosen. Draft your best beer-style answer, and following our 3-day rule, we will reveal the suggested answer on day 26. Before we officially end today's session, remember Matthew chapter 6 verse 24. No one can serve two masters. In remedial law, a case belongs to the first court that takes it. In your bar journey, serve only the master of discipline and shut the door on distractions. Thank you for joining me on day 23. Keep up the momentum, and I will see you in our next session.